A spinnerbait is a great lure, but we can do so much better as anglers in the way that we use it. So I want to be talking about 4 things that we can do with our spinnerbait fishing to just make it that much better. Now I know that you can't see it here under the water, but this is just flat chock full of hydrilla right here. Just vegetation all over the place, just under the surface. But I'm gonna fish this grass line here where these 2 types of cover meet. So I'm not gonna have too much trouble with it right now, banging it into these weeds or dragging on this vegetation and making an erratic action. But oftentimes we don't impart any action on our spinnerbait at all. So as it's coming through open water, we just reel it right back straight to the boat. And we want to get those reaction strikes out of it. So if we don't hit anything, or we're halfway back and there isn't a tree limb there isn't vegetation to rip through, make sure that you bounce that lure and give it that erratic action. That's the first thing we can do to make our fishing so much more effective. It gets those fish to react even when they don't want to. A lot of times a bass will be following our lure, especially a lure like a spinnerbait, and when all of a sudden it just twitches or jerks right in front of them, they just can't help themselves and they go after it, they strike. The next thing that we can do better with is our blades. I don't know about you, I oftentimes just right out of the package, away we go. Here I've got a Colorado and a willow leaf that I'm working with, but we don't really change the size of the blades very often, or we don't throw single blade spinnerbaits probably as often as we should, especially in colder water or muddy water. Just a single big Colorado blade can do really well, but we just kind of stick with the stock stuff. So, it's not a bad idea to put together a spinnerbait box and then, take the bend out of that wire there at the end, slip off a number 5, put a big old number 7 on, especially if you have some big shad in your water that you're fishing. So that's the second thing we can do, is really alter those blades up quite a bit. I definitely can do better with that for sure myself. The third thing that we need to do with our spinnerbait fishing is be very conscious of the depth change. Now here I've pretty much got a flat. Okay, these bass are getting in a spawning mood and coming up into this type of stuff. But let's say we're going down a shoreline and you've got a dock and you go ahead and throw that spinnerbait out there, and when it first hits the water, that spinnerbait may be right near the bottom, banging into that stuff that we want. And then as we work our way back to us towards the edge of that dock, maybe it drops down to 6 or 7 feet, but we just keep that same retrieve going, and all of a sudden the spinnerbait is in the bottom part of the water column, then it's up in the middle, then it's up in the top part. So as that depth change, that contour change happens, we need to consciously slow that bait down to maintain the target depth that we're really going for. And the key is to be banging into something. So if that means we need to slow it down and bang it around stuff off the bottom, that's what we've got to do. But we take a cast, let's say this dock scenario where we could be 90% of efficiency banging into cover on our way back to the boat, but most of the time we just throw it out there and just start reeling it back. That depth tapers off, and instead of 90% of efficiency, maybe we're 15 or 20% efficiency. So we could up the number of strikes that we get so easy just by being aware of that depth change. And the last thing that we need to do better as spinnerbait anglers is make sure that those blades are turning right away. If we flip that in the water and we don't feel it, snap it immediately to get those blades going. Maybe when it landed, it picked up a leaf or got just the tiniest bit of vegetation wrapped around that swivel and that blade's not going. That is basically a wasted cast. So if you don't feel the blade going right away, make sure you go ahead and give it a good twitch to get it going. We don't want to lose that first 3 feet of our presentation because the blade is not turning like it should. And hey, if you want to watch a video on some advanced spinnerbait tips, go ahead and check this one out right here. And don't forget to go out and encourage someone today you never know how you might just change their life for the bass fishing life. I'm your host, Steve Rogers.